It seems like every time we have a youth Sunday, something always happens to make me like really emotional before I get up here and preach. I guess that's God's way of keeping me uncomfortable. Last time before we had Youth Sunday, a close friend of mine had just passed away. The time before that, I was just ordained. That time I could barely talk at all. And this time I got to see Jay. Jay has been my best friend since we were 9 years old. And as soon as I walked into the doors of New Life, probably, I guess it's been about a year and a half ago, the very first time I walked in here, I knew that he was going to be with me one day. I didn't know when, but I knew he was going to come with me at some point. And so I talked to him about it a little bit back then, but he wasn't quite ready yet, so I said, okay, I'm just going to start praying. And so I wrote it down, and I could show you where I started praying for him to come. And one day, I guess like 2 months ago, he just called me up randomly, like 8 o'clock on like a Saturday, and he was like, I'm coming to Columbia. I'm leaving everything behind. God told me that you need help, and I'm coming. And so, pretty cool to see him here. All right, we're going to do, at the Catholic church down the road, they do some aerobics sometimes. And so we're, some of y'all are like, do they really? I'm going to get you guys working a little bit today. If I could just get everybody to stand up for me. Woo! Up we go. Don't worry, some of y'all are not going to be standing real long. We're going to do a little process of elimination. I want you to sit down whenever I say something that you don't have. Okay? So when I say something and you don't have it, just go ahead and have a seat. A home that you own. Just know, all right, Pastor Dale, no. whoever sat down, I'll talk to you later. Just know I'm just standing because I'm up here. I'm going. How about a husband or a wife? How about children of your own? This might knock a couple of you out. Reliable transportation. Let me define reliable. Not only did it get you here, you're confident it's going to get you home. Reliable. How about a savings account? Something, of some regard. I'm not going to say you have millions, but you have it. Okay? Respect from the respected. How about trustworthy friends? I'm impressed there's still a couple people. You can't stand back up. Once you're out, you're out. I'm surprised there's still a couple people going. Okay. How about a refrigerator full of food? All right. The perfect body and appearance. I'm not going to kick you out. You just, decide what you got there. A great wardrobe. Okay. And you live in a quiet, safe neighborhood. Now, if you're still standing, you got an ego larger than... No, I'm just kidding. Thank you, those still remaining standing. Give them a hand for being good. Now, if you sat down pretty early on or at some point, don't feel bad, because Jesus never had anything that I mentioned. Okay? I think it's kind of funny, a little bit ironic, that probably one of the most remedial type elementary principles of our faith is this idea of being Christ-like. Even from a child, we want to be like Christ, we want to be like Christ. But yet we spend all of our energy, all of our efforts, all of our time, all of our money, we spend all of it pursuing things that he never had. Not to say that these things are bad, but he never had them. And we're called to live a life of that likeness, and we pursue these things diligently. What I've found is that what we want is the peace of Jesus, but not the poverty. We want the prosperity without the flogging. We want the contentment without the commitment. is really what we want. We want Christ a la carte, okay? Which is we want to take the good and we want to leave the bad. And we all want to do that. We want Jesus, we all do, we wouldn't be here if we didn't, but we want him on our terms when it's convenient for us, and as long as it doesn't interfere at all with anything that I mentioned in the beginning. That's the only capacity that we want to take Jesus in. And the reason why the churches aren't more full than they are is because preachers stand up here like I am and preach that it might interfere with some of those things that you want. And they don't want to hear that. It happened 2,000 years ago with the rich young ruler, right? What must I do to be perfect? Give up everything. Follow me. I want you to picture again, just sort of picture what your life would be like if, let's say, for whatever reason, I did have the ability to give you all of those things. Picture what your life would look like if your life looked like Dr. Kant's. If you had a home that was your very own, a loving husband or wife, children, reliable transportation, a savings account, respect from the respected, trustworthy friends, a refrigerator full of food, the perfect body and appearance, a great wardrobe, and you lived in a quiet, safe neighborhood. Picture what your life would look like. And the obvious question is, would you be happy or would you be content? And here at church, your mouth says, no, of course not. But inside, your heart says, oh yeah. Oh yeah, that's all the things that I want. I've always wanted those things. I'm going to read to you a quote that I fell in love with a long time ago, and it really makes you think, and it's from John Piper, and he says, the critical question for our generation and for every generation is this: if you could have heaven with no sickness and with all the friends you ever had on earth, all the food you ever liked, and all the leisure activities you ever enjoyed, and all the beauties you ever saw, all the physical pleasures you ever tasted, and no human conflict or natural disasters, could you be satisfied with heaven if Christ were not there? And that's a quote that'll really rock you. Because a lot of times we get a little caught up in the stuff, get a little caught up in the amenities of what we think that Christianity is, or that our faith is, or that church is, or that life is, instead of just being caught up in the Creator, instead of just being caught up in our Savior, right? If your answer is no, if you read that and you can honestly say, I don't care about any of that, I just want to meet my Jesus. There's an old gospel song about that, right? Where somebody in here might know it. He's talking about this guy walks into heaven and he sees all this great stuff and he's just like, okay, where's Jesus at, though? That's what I came here for. Yeah. You know, and if that's you, and if you're like, that's me, I don't care about any of that, all I want is my Jesus. If that's you, then I have to ask you, why do you spend all your time thinking about all those things now? Let's bring heaven to earth, right? Instead of spending this time looking for all these things that we're not going to care about once we get into heaven anyway, let's just pursue Jesus now. He's all that we really want. He's the only thing that's ever going to supply anything to us. I'm going to look at two verses, just sort of back to back, and kind of apply one just sort of central concept. In John chapter 10, verse 10, the key word I'm going to emphasize is just thief. I just want you to listen to that word powerfully. It says, the thief does not come except to steal, kill, and to destroy. And I have come that they might have life, and that they might have it more abundantly. Keeping that verse, jump over to a different gospel in Matthew chapter 6 and verse 20. Key word, again, the word that's carrying over here is going to be thief. It says, store your treasures in heaven where moths and vermin cannot destroy them, and thieves do not break in and steal. Okay? Store your treasures in heaven, okay? And it says the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy. Okay, I have come that you might have more abundant life. So the question is the abundance of the life that Jesus speaks of, is it in all the things that we want? Or is it in simply having Him and then therefore caring less about those things? Okay? Because I've met a lot of people that say, hey, I live in the abundant life. Okay? God is blessing me. I don't doubt that He is. But I believe when Jesus says, store your treasures in heaven where nothing can get to them, I believe that is the abundance of life. That is the true abundance that he's speaking of. Okay? The abundance of our lives is found only in receiving the fullness of Christ. That's really it. That is the abundance that I truly believe that Jesus was speaking of. It wasn't in the new car. It wasn't in even the great family, even the greatest blessing. Solomon said that to have a wife was a reward for all your toils on earth. All these wonderful things that he gives us, those aren't the abundance. That's not the abundance of life. That's just good things. It's just blessings. The abundance is receiving the fullness of all that he is. Two other thoughts. Jesus, he was always saying these like really prolific things. It's wild. And so just two other things. He said, without the Father, I, the Son, can do nothing. Right? And then another time, another conversation, he says, humanly speaking, this is impossible, but with God, all things are possible. Right? Okay? Therefore, you take these two thoughts, once again, and you put them together, and you can say, if I have God, then I have all I need. Okay? Because without him, I can't do anything. But with him, I can do everything. And that really puts together all those things that we're searching for. None of those things will do anything. Jesus says, I got nothing if I don't have him. I can do nothing if I don't have him. Now, I want you to watch how cool God is. It's always scary when you say that. You say that something cool is about to happen. I want you to watch how cool God is. Write this verse down somewhere. I'm sure at least half this room can probably recite it, hopefully more than that, but I really just want you to jot this down because I'm just going to go back to this verse for the rest of the time that I'm up here talking. Somebody probably has somebody in their life that reminds them of this verse all the time. Galatians chapter 6 and verse 9. It says, let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. Okay? Now, watch this. We're going to look, and I'm going to try to fly through this because it's a lot of information, but I want to look at all the things that we feel like we're lacking, because whether we admit it or not, when we don't have them, we feel that we're lacking. We feel incomplete. Okay? We're going to look at all those things that we're missing and the things that Jesus never had, and we're just going to watch what happened. Okay? Because if you do not give up, you'll reap a harvest. I want you to look at this. A home that you own, okay? Jesus spent a good portion of his life as a nomad. He says in Luke, foxes have dens and birds have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head. Now, he lives in a mansion. He says, in my Father's house there are many rooms. If it were not so, I would have told you. Okay? How about a husband or wife? He never took a wife as we would consider it on earth, but we, the church, are considered to be his bride. Children. He never had any children here, yet the world is full of his children. He encourages the disciples to let the children come to him, declaring that the kingdom of heaven belongs to such. Reliable transportation. About 500 years before Jesus ever came along, there was a man named Zechariah who prophesied that Jesus would come in and that he would be riding on some humble forms of transportation. A donkey's colt. That would be his form of transportation, which I have not rode that, but I can imagine it's probably not your ideal, most reliable form of transportation. But when he comes back, he's not going to be on the donkey. He's going to be on a white horse. Okay? How about a hefty savings account? In Luke chapter 9, verse 3, he instructs his disciples to take nothing with them. No walking stick, no bag, no food, no money, or even a change of clothes. Yet now, where he is at, it says in 1 Corinthians that no eye has even seen how wonderful that it is. Respect from the respected. It was the notorious people of good stature who hated Jesus. Yet in Matthew chapter 3, verse 17, God says, this is my son, whom I love. With him I am well pleased. What greater approval is there? Trustworthy friends. betrayed by all of his friends, set up to be murdered by one in particular. Yet he was crucified next to a thief, who he assured would be with him in paradise. And he declared himself that there is no greater love than to lay down one's life for his friends. A refrigerator full of food. He never had a refrigerator full, but he did do some pretty cool stuff with just a few loaves and a couple of fish. God supplies our needs. The perfect body and appearance. Isaiah prophesied that Jesus would have no beauty or majesty to attract us to him. But John says in Revelations when he saw him that he would have hair white like wool and eyes like a blazing fire. Which maybe doesn't sound like the most attractive person to us, but it's definitely someone that we would be attracted to, someone we would be drawn to. A great wardrobe. Jesus instructs us not to worry about what we wear, so we can assume that he probably wasn't like the fashionista of Jerusalem. But now, in Revelations, it says that he's dressed in a robe dipped in blood. Galatians 6:9. How about live in a quiet, safe neighborhood? You know, he was born in a manger, and he spent much of his adult life, all of his ministry, spending time in the homes of sinners. But now he walks streets paved with gold, guarded by 12 gates made of pearls. Galatians 6:9. If you do not give up, then in the proper time you will receive a harvest. So, as I looked at this is like this. One of those times I did a study, a 3-week study with the youth on just Jesus' life, just trying to cram pack his whole life in 3 weeks, which is incredibly hard, and just trying to really leave out a lot of details and you squeeze a lot of things in. But as I was doing that study, it made me just sort of look into all aspects of his life, some of the aspects that I feel like we even miss. And as myself, I was getting caught up with a couple of things that I wrote on that list. I began to just write these different things down, and I didn't even write them down at first to make a point. I wrote them down just because I wanted them. And as I wrote them down, I looked and I went back at my list and I said, my Jesus never had any of these things. And it just sort of blew me away. But then I did this, it's one of those things like I did it on a napkin, and then I went back and I looked and I said, but he got all of these things in the end. And he has promised the same to me. If you have him, you have more than you'll ever need. And if you trust him and if you follow him, then you'll inherit a fortune. But what I want you to understand is that's not prosperity preaching. I'm not saying you'll have all the world can offer you. I'm saying you'll have all the world can't offer you. You'll have all that only he can offer you. That is what the abundant life is. That's what it means to follow him. Don't be discouraged if your life looks a lot like Jesus's. He said it himself that it would be easier for a camel to fit through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to inherit the kingdom of heaven. You know, and Paul even considered it an honor to suffer for Christ's sake, to take part in that. None of these things are bad. None of the things that I've mentioned are bad by themselves. But the problem is that none of them are worth a lifetime of pursuing. You know? And that's kind of what we're about, even at our finest roots, the American dream. The idea of the spouse and the children and the white picket fence. These are wonderful things, such blessings, perfect gifts from God, truly. And the reliable transportation, the new car, and the food or whatever have you call it that I've heard about sometimes. You know, these things aren't bad on their own, but nobody's going to mention them at your funeral. You know, whenever it's done here, and somebody, whether you like it or not, is going to have to stand up there, and they're going to have to dig to find out some stuff to talk about your life. What are they going to mention? Are they going to mention that, Jim was a good guy. He had the newest, what was that, a Ford he was driving? That was sweet. You know? Or, one thing about that guy, he was always the guy that went to work every day. That was him. you know? They're not concerned about those things, and neither will you. Not where you're at. I want to ask for our worship team to come forward. I want to give an opportunity, an invitation today, not to receive all the things that I asked for, all the things that I mentioned, not to come up and to claim them as your own, but an opportunity and an invitation to do as Jesus said, which is to pick up your cross and to follow him. You know, I was studying about one time I wanted to see how much that cross weighed that Jesus had to carry. Because if I decided if I'm instructed to carry a cross every day of my life too, I want to know how much it weighed. And statistically speaking, they say it weighed probably about 300 pounds, okay? Which is a pretty big cross. But I've found in my life that it really weighs a lot more than that. And it weighed a lot more than that for him too. Okay? So this morning, I want you to just take a look at your life. In Matthew 24, verse 13, it says, "He who endures to the end shall be saved." Endures to the end. And so this morning, I want you to just take a look at your life. I want you to look at all the things that you're pursuing, and I want you to just leave here today knowing that I am not pursuing Christ a la carte. I am not taking the good of Christ and leaving out the bad. I'm receiving the fullness of him.